Thank you so much for staying tuned to this channel. Welcome to yet another edition of Africa Discourse. I am Wilson Marshall. And of course, I'm standing in for Eva Sunokuge, who is unavoidably absent. Not to worry, next week, Monday, we'll be here to take you on another ride on Africa Discourse. Well, today on Africa Discourse, we'll take a look at climate change in Africa, how it affects Africa, and of course, issues arising as a result of climate change. Outside Africa, I get to hear about the North Pole, the South Pole, the melting ice, the broken ice, the polar breaking. You get to hear about cyclone, tornado. You get to hear about so many natural disasters. And that seems to be strange to Africans because here we are used to erosion, flood. I mean, it's like mudslide. Yeah, you get to hear about so many other things, different folk with different stroke, but one way or the other, it was observed that they are all connected to climate change. With me here in the studio to talk about this particular topic, climate change and how it affects us as Africans, I have a head of climate change and environmental health desk, Edo State Ministry of Health, Frank Enenemo. Welcome to Africa Discourse. I appreciate your coming.
As always, it's my delight to be here.
Yeah. So right now, the issue of climate change is no longer new, but it's like some people haven't really taken it to heart in the sense that so many things that is negating the climate to change negatively is still being practiced in many climes. Well, take it up from there as it affects Africa as a continent.
Thank you very much, Wilson. You see, the first time I heard of climate change, it was like something very abstract, something synonymous with the developed world. But as I speak to you today, climate change is a reality. The effect is staring at us, and we are contending with all the negative consequences of issues of climate change. Then the question is, what is climate change? As much as possible, one will try not to be too academic. One will try not to be too theoretical. One will try to be as much as possible simplistic so that the average individual on the street, ranging from the Akara woman that fries beans cake on the street to the topmost sophisticated political leader or the topmost oil servicing companies who are still flaring gases, to really understand the enormity of this concept. Now, the next question will be, what then is climate change? Climate change, from the word climate, is an offshoot from weather, in the sense that there have been consistent study of weather conditions over time, talking about rainfall, sunshine, temperature, relative humidity, and all the associated issues with weather for a period of not less than 30 to 35 years. So when that has been established, it means a particular pattern of climate has been established. And then once there is now a shift, that shift is what we now refer to today as climate change. That shift in the average climatic pattern of climatic conditions
over a period of time,
not less than 30, 35 years. That shift, if that shift is negative, like we are going through now,
yes,
then we will continue to experience what you call global warming, ozone layer depletion, and then the concept of climate change. Or if it is positive, then we experience global cooling. But one thing that is striking here...
But hold on, you talked about ozone layer depletion and global warming.
Okay.
These two, did they make up climate change? Or factors that lead to climate change?
Beautiful. Now, the ozone is a natural occurring gas put held there in space at the stratosphere. The stratosphere, in fact, the Earth is divided into series of spherical layers stratosphere, lithosphere, troposphere. Let's not. That's why I said I want to be as simplistic, biosphere, atmosphere. I want to be as simplistic as possible so that the average big cake woman on the street will understand what we are really talking about and appreciate the enormity of the effect of what we are now experiencing. So I try to define, before that interjection, I try to define the concept that there is a shift in what we have been used to, what has been trending as a normal pattern. Now, if that shift is negative, then we'll continue to experience the issues of climate change, ozone layer depletion, global warming. But if it is positive, presumably, then we experience global cooling. But the truth is from this definition is that if there are extreme negative consequences, there are extreme positive consequences, as it were, then means that there was supposed to be an equilibrium.
A balance.
It was supposed to be a balance. That balance is not just there. That is why today, if we are going to experience rainfall, it will be so extreme, people will be crying. If we are going to experience all other environmental effect conditions like we mentioned, tornadoes, cyclones, landslides, earthquake, and the rest, if it's going to be very, very extreme. So that balance is no longer there, and that is why we are contending with the negative consequences of the climate change.
Are you not saying that
experience today?
I was going to say that climate change can be positive also.
Yes, if the change is positive, then we experience global cooling. But now, what we are experiencing now is that the change is negative. So the negative effect, apart from the three major ones I just mentioned, you have talked about flooding, which is another one. We've not looked at heat stress, heat stroke, health effect, environmental effect, then agricultural effect on food security. Now, haven't been able to do a grounding for climate change as to what the concept, the meaning, and definitions are, so that people can begin to understand. We now want to look at what are the likely causes, what are the that is anthropogenic activities by man that causes this climate change, that causes ozone layer depletion. Because the ozone layer is held there in space for our habitable, for the earth to be habitable by human beings and other forms of life. But as it is today, the ozone layer, the depletion has continued to is still there. So the gradual thinning that we are now being exposed to the direct, almost being exposed to the direct ultraviolet radiation of sunlight. Now let me start to look at the anthropogenic activities we do as human beings that result in this ozone layer depletion and, by extension, climate change. Number one is the burning of fossil fuel. Fossil fuel.
Burning, okay.
As number one major activity by man that is contributing. By the burning of fossil fuel, there are gaseous emissions, nitrous oxide, water vapor, carbon dioxide, carbon. The list is endless. Under the heading of carbon CFCs, carbon
fluoride.
Yes, fluorocarbons,
Yes.
CFC gases. These gases are also known as ozone depletion compounds.
Compounds, yes.
These gases are also known as heat trappers. Let me give you a typical scenario of this issue of global warming. Average global temperature is rising as I speak to you. And even if emission stops today, we see what has saturated the atmosphere will continue the depletion of the ozone layer for the next 200 years. Now, in terms of short waves, the heat trappers are saturated. They allow the permeation of the direct ultraviolet radiation of light, you know, to the earth, but the irradiated energy is prevented from going back. So they absorb them and then cause global warming.
Global warming.
And that global warming will result in the what you call, in the smelting of the land-based ice caps. Global warming will also result to drought. And then that portends shortage of water. This is again outside the consequences of flooding. Because issue of flooding is another kettle of fish we've seen. As I speak, there are meteorological forecasts or projections that what we experienced last year, which everyone was complaining about, is going to be a tip of the iceberg compared to what we are going to experience. I'm not a prophet of doom, but these are the meteorological, you are in the media. These are meteorological projections. And I make bold to say that flooding as it were, which is overflow of storm runoff or water, either from the surface sources, could either be natural or artificial. The one that usually triggers, the one that causes problem, is usually the artificial, attributable to the opening of the Cameroonian dam. That is artificial. But when there are we now experience heavy rainfall than usual, than necessary, because don't forget we are talking of extreme conditions, whether it's positive or negative. There is no more balance. That is now resulting in these conditions.
If you take a look at Africa, in the Copenhagen conference, it was realized that Africa is among the least continents emitting this kind of gases you're talking about that depletes the ozone layer that gives rise to global warming. How true is this?
My dear uncle, I'm taken aback. Okay, Africa, we generate or emit less, but we are faced with the adverse. We are hard hit with the adverse consequences. They are also making mitigation measures for themselves. Mitigation measures to alleviate the effect of and consequences of this phenomenon, because it's already a global phenomenon. Now they are shipping to you all their obsolete electronic devices. The devices they ship to you are also obsolete that they must have been outdated in their client for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, particularly with the refrigerators, which contains the third eye of oxygen is of two elements. Yeah. But with ozone, which is part of the refrigerant and the coolant, there's a third one that once you expose it, it goes straight to the ozone layer and start to cause reaction that depletes the ozone. All these are still being shipped down to us. In fact, you go to market today, there's hardly anything that is not Belgium this, Belgium that. I think it's only human being that you do. Up to hair, wig for women. Yeah. You have Belgium this, Belgium that. So, we produce less, and yet we suffer the enemy. Yeah, I agree. It's true, we produce less, but yet, these consequences is staring at us. They have a lot of mitigation measures. I may even want to ask you, what has happened to the COPs? COPs means Conference of Parties. All the treaties, the Montreal Protocol, the Kyoto Convention, the Brazil Agreement, Conference. There are countries under the UN that are parties to this agreement. To one, reduce by 60% gaseous emission by 2050.
But how many of them?
Create an avenue where there will be what you call carbon credit
But how many of them have really stuck to this agreement signed?
That is the problem. It has been now politicized. I don't want to say that I don't know how they look at us, because they are the ones having all the powers to either enforce or to ensure that there is compliance. Well, at their own end, I have not been opportune to be there. But at their own end, I want to think that to a large extent, they are putting a lot of mitigation measures. It's just that there may not have been enough political will from this end, because it's not a matter of for state. It's a matter for the national authorities.
Okay.
Well, a lot of things, a few things are being put in place by appointing desk officers, calling for meetings, and then doing a lot of sensitization. But it goes beyond that. Because why? As we speak, deforestation is still going on.
It's still going on, yes.
The burning of fossil fuel, I don't know how we can seek for alternative that can be commensurate to reducing the amount of emissions currently going on. As I speak to you now, if I'm not mistaken, this station will run on diesel. In a compound of, let's come down home, in a compound of 6 families, you see people running generator. The electricity is not always there. So people will be compelled to seek for alternative. Many businesses will have to survive. Economic ventures are relying on the burning of fossil fuel. Vehicles are relying on the burning of fossil fuel. Gas flaring, as I speak to you, are relying. Gas flaring is still an issue, being politicized. Then how do we manage our waste as individuals? That's another kettle of fish, because we are talking of human anthropogenic activity, and it's so wide.
Wide. But hold on.
Human, okay.
Are you not talking about wastes being
Waste
part of the
of
cost?
all kind. Dry solid waste, liquid waste, gaseous waste, even our healthcare waste. In terms of all the consequences, all these waste, they are the way and manner, this sanitary manner in which we handle them, this sanitary manner with which they get them disposed. Whereas, so much materials of economic value can be harnessed, can be salvaged, if these wastes are recovered, if these wastes are reclaimed, if these wastes are recycled. Okay? Now, nothing substantial is being done. Then the another one, the most pathetic one, is the issue of plastic waste. Everything now is plastic. And they are non-biodegradable. Go to Niger Delta, look at our surface water. Citation of the water surface sources. Why would there not be erosion? Why would there not be flooding? These plastics find their way at the end of the day. What we just do, we just, what we call, not in my backyard, just carry, relocate. Whereas, but I am happy, recently I had a discussion with a friend, a colleague who works in Edo State Waste Management and Disposal Board, and that a state-of-the-art waste management plan is soon to evolve or come on board in Edo State, where all these will have to be taken. People are ready to pay. It's just like the issue of power. People are ready to pay. But in a situation where the enabling environment is not there, of course, people will always, because you see, human activities must generate waste. If we stay here for another 20, 30 minutes or 1 hour, before you know it, we will generate waste, whether dry, solid waste. We will want to go and contend with excretion and all that. Waste must come up. And this waste must be sanitarily handled. This waste must be sanitarily disposed. Yes. And where it is possible, you know, for recycling, to recover materials of economic value, it will be appreciated. And we can even go into, from human waste, you can generate methane.
Methane, yeah.
Which is a good source for gas, which can be used for cooking. We are talking of gas is getting expensive. We are talking of gas is becoming something else to generate electricity from methane. And these gases we are talking about are highly, environmentally friendly, are highly environmentally safe.
All right, we want to go for a break. When we return, we'll continue with this discussion. If you just joined us, this is Africa Discourse. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is Africa Discourse. It is a live studio, and we are taking a look at, yes, global warming and its effects in Africa, the issues arising. And I have Frank and here with me in the studio. He's the head of global warming, and of course, the health aspect of it. Yeah. Anyway, let's leave title right. Let's focus on the man, because he was giving us lecture, one-on-one lecture about how it affects Africans. Now, one major source of waste, because we talked about waste, is this plastic waste. If you go along our river banks, go along our rivers in Africa, in Nigeria, even our villages, you get to see that most parts are now used as refuse dump, especially for plastic waste. How does this affect us?
Okay, let me quickly put the record straight if you didn't get it right. My name is Franklin anymore.
Yeah.
I head the Environmental Health and Climate Change Desk of the Edo State Ministry of Health.
Yes.
And by background, I'm an environmental health officer.
Yeah.
So, we were already talking about waste to wealth indirectly. When I was talking of converting human waste to produce gas.
But right now, I'm talking about the plastics right now.
Yes, I said now the society have become sophisticated. Manufacturers have found it very convenient to produce most products and package most products in plastic. Some of these plastics are low density polyethylene. Some are in high density polyethylene, especially with bottled and sachet water. And you agree with me that bottled water and sachet water, the consumption rate is very high, especially now with the issue of global warming. The system gets dehydrated and it's like, oh, I need water to get myself. Thirst is high and all that. Oh, I'm hot. There's heat, people. Well, that again calls for concern, because how do we get this plastic properly disposed? For not just environmental aesthetics, that's quality, but there could be other health effects. Now, if you take a look at most water bodies, what we call in geography or environmental health as hydrosphere.
Yeah.
Whether sea, everything, you see that most of those floating on top of the water are mainly plastic. And you can appreciate the enormity when you go far into most of these oceans that is running across Africa. And I can tell you that plastic waste, for that plastic you see, it comes with more than 200 type of different toxic chemicals.
More than 200?
Yes, toxic chemicals. We may not be able to go into mentioning names now. Now, under the intensity of the sun, these chemicals will begin to dissolve into that water. So the ecosystem is at risk, because aquatic life, eventually serve as food to us. will be absorbing them in all forms. Okay? And then once that is being done, by way of food chain, this thing comes back again to man. And then they will start to configure in the system. And then people will start to come down with all sorts of diseases, coupled with the effect of heat, stroke, heat stress, direct ultraviolet radiation of sunlight on the skin. That again portends what? Melanoma and non-melanoma cancers. Cataract, eye diseases. These are conditions. It may take some time, it may be slow, but definitely it is ravaging. These are some of the effect. Again, the waterways again are blocked. The waterways are blocked. So because these plastics are non-biodegradable, so they don't decay. They are not putrescible. Well, the only thing that can would have helped the situation if there was sanitary disposal, of course, burning again. I will be sounding unprofessional, unethical if I will recommend burning.
Burning, why?
Because burning will further complicate the issues of gaseous emissions, which we are already contending with. So the best will be to either recover them, reclaim them, recycle them, or reuse them.
Reclaim, recover, recycle, or reuse.
Now, you will recall, you are a newsman, so I know you will be very conversant with it. NAFDAC have come to warn that any sachet water, this has been trending over the years, that is more than 2 months is not considered safe. Because, one, you are going to be contending with issue of odor, you are going to be contending with issue of taste, you are going to even contending with issues of turbidity and possibly color. Why? Under the intensity of the sun, people will shade this sachet water. And there's reaction going on between the cellophane. Don't forget it's low density. It's unlike the bottled water that is even high density.
High density, yes.
That is low density. So the reaction will become so dissolution. So don't be surprised you take a bite on pure water and what you call sachet water. Okay, we'll call them sachet water, not pure water. Because to me, many of them are poor, better described as poor water than pure water. And you take a bite and say, this water get taste, it get odor, it dey smell. It get as it dey sound. So I said, you see, all these things, initially I thought that they were quite abstract, but I've soon come to realize that they are living with us. The negative consequences are already here with us. The negative effects are already here with us. So, even if, to go back to the topic on ground, even if we decide to stop emission today, what has saturated the atmosphere will continue. And we are hearing that by 2050, the amount of gaseous emission, because of high industrialization, is likely to triple.
Triple, yeah.
It's likely to triple. And if that happens, my brother Wilson, it's just 1/8. It's just 1/8.
Yeah.
So it's like an egg for everybody to jealously protect. Now, we have not looked at other health effects, like the resurgence of pests. The Anopheles mosquito, with global warming, the Anopheles mosquito cannot thrive under a cold condition. That's why malaria appears to be a bit alien, perhaps in the temperate region. But in Africa, it was malaria was referred to as, is it a white man's grave? There was a way
they describe it.
It was sarcastically coined that Africa was termed as a white man's grave because the Anopheles mosquito, that is the main vector for the transmission of the plasmodium, all the different types of plasmodium vivax, plasmodium of malariae, plasmodium ovale, all the plasmodium thrives more under temperate Sorry, heat under a heat condition, under a hot condition. That is why sub-Saharan Africa has remained, the issue of eradicating malaria has remained an issue.
But still, now back to global warming, you get to realize that in Africa, most of us tend to use firewood, which we get from the forest. The issue of deforestation, how does it affect global warming or impact on it?
You have just reminded me of something that almost skipped my memory. You see, the issue of deforestation cause for concern. Cause for concern. That's why I said we should be thinking ahead, alternative source to energy. Now we are using these timbers that were planted there several centuries, decades, not less than 5 decades. We are felling them almost on a daily basis without a commensurate arrangement for replacement. Don't also forget, the forest is also the large sink for the absorption of carbon in the environment.
Yes.
So if we release carbon dioxide, the plants around us will absorb the carbon dioxide for them to. You see, nature is so robust. But you see, when you take the resilience of nature, of the environment for granted, and it's like pushing a goat to the wall. Of course, it gets to the end of it comes back.
It comes back.
So the rate at which it will help to recuperate itself, because so we have overstretched the resilient nature of the environment. Now, what was supposed to be a large sink, are you with me, for the carbon dioxide that we generate, the carbon that we bring out, is now being felt by the day, by the seconds, by the minute, by the hour, without a commensurate
replacement.
Of course, because we taking in oxygen as produced by these plants, and then they are absorbing the carbon dioxide. It's creating a balance. So effort should be towards making the environment green again. Greening the environment. Planting flowers. We are going very sophisticated. Instead of planting flowers, we are doing interlocking ties all over the place. The Oyibo man that brought interlocking ties, we are trying to copy. You see, sometimes black people will copy wrongly. The Oyibo man that brought interlocking ties didn't bring it to tie the entire compound. Because the intensity of the sun, it expands. You are also a scientist. And by the time it strikes that interlocking tie, it spreads. It expands, yes. It expands, it spreads. And then it's also contributing to the problem of global warming. And also that we use more of cement and block. Which are bad conductors of heat. Whereas the white man that brought interlocking tie will always do a small part, perhaps from the tarred road from his house to his where he will use it. And these other areas,
grasses and gardens and flowers.
And what am I driving at? Whenever there is rainfall, and don't forget, we are experiencing heavier rains these days. And the pattern, there's a shift in the pattern.
Yes.
It no longer follows the normal course we are used to. So when there are heavier rains, the surface for absorption is being reduced by the seconds. We are building houses, we are building estates, we are putting interlocking ties. Of course, who are you pushing the water to? Water must find its level. That is the truth. The one that was supposed to have been absorbed here has been pushed to another level, but been pushed, of course. And don't forget,
it's not little flooding.
Really, it's only when you have water in your cup that you have that power over the control of water. When it has left you, I don't even know. Because between fire and water, I don't even know the one that can be more terrible. Because you can have fire brigade, but there's no water brigade. There are projections, there are forecasts that this year there are likely to be heavier
rainfall
and more. What we experienced last year as flooding will be worse than, for this year, will be worse than what we had in previous years.
Now, at the beginning of this interview, you talked about global warming. Of course, it happens over a period of time in conjunction with climate change. If it happens within 35 years or more,
30, not less than 30,
35 years,
there have been a pattern
and there's
for
a shift in the
weather condition. Yes.
Now, if there's a shift in this pattern, would there be any way that this can be corrected within this period of time, or will we meant to suffer what we've contributed to in terms of climate change?
Whether there will be a way to correct it.
Yes, or we will just have to suffer it until it elapses or until it recedes.
I don't know in this generation, because you are talking of environmental sustainability. This generation has already been compromised. I don't know how many of us have the next 50 years to stay. Even if we are 50 years today, we still have, by the time you are having another, okay, let's say another 100 years to stay. So this generation, and we are talking of redoubling more of glaciers. As we speak now, how many flights are in space there, flying, they are emitting? How many vehicles are there? So this generation is already compromised. The amount of gaseous emissions, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, that have saturated the atmosphere, I don't see in the next 200 years how it can be corrected. I said,
so we're going to endure.
We are going to bear it. But we can only be doing mitigation. We can only be doing mitigation. We can only be doing adaptation to climate change. Series of then the question will now be, what are going to be the mitigation measures? Because if there can be mitigation, what are the mitigation measures? We have talked one earlier in the past without me really emphasizing. Yeah. Making the environment green again is crucial. Very, very crucial. Making the environment green by reforestation, afforestation. Then, alternative source to energy. The burning of fossil fuel must come down, must reduce by not less than 60%. But in developed climes, we see, you will agree with me that they have even started using, developing vehicles that run on batteries, that are self-automated on batteries without the burning of fossil fuel. We see, as I speak with you today, gas flaring is still going on. They have been politicizing gas flaring. Of course, that is on the exclusive list, not on the concurrent list. They have been politicizing gas flaring that it will soon end. Comes here, this year, it will end. They'll say they have shifted again.
But it's still ongoing.
Why are we not? Go to Niger Delta. Go and see the plight of our Niger Deltans. As you are approaching any of the states from whatever axis into the core typical Niger Delta, what tells you that you are not? Is at the amount of gas being flared, you see, in flame. That thing does not off 24 hours, 247 is running.
That's right.
We are talking of mitigation. Then, our waste. As much as insignificant you may consider the small drink stick of cigarette that people just do and throw on the waste, it's also causing it. What about the dry solid waste? What are the arrangements in place to ensure, we are just practicing not in my backyard, to ensure that these wastes are properly recovered, are properly reclaimed, are properly reused, and perhaps recycled. What are the arrangements?
Thank you so much, because you've lectured a lot. I call this a lecture series to speak on climate change in Africa and the issues in focus. In 1 minute, What advice do you have for Africans? Talking about enduring what is already in motion. 1 minute.
We are already in it. Let me, so to speak, we are already in the mess. This was not the original way the Creator handed over this environment to us. Let us see how we can make it green again. Let us see how we can allow it to recuperate itself by abiding to all the treaties, all the agreements, call it Kyoto in Japan, call it Montreal, call it Paris Agreement, all the conventions we should adhere. And then at an individual level, we should appreciate that there's just only one environment that we need to live. We cannot have it otherwise.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the wonderful analysis. You've heard them. We're already in it. How do we survive it? Make the earth green again. Even in Africa, the smallest thing you think is not important, it is very, very important. Start planting trees. Know how to reuse our plastics. So many things he's talked about that can really help, because believe it or not, we are already in it. Repairing it will take like beyond 50 years or thereabouts. So our own generation...
It's already compromised.
It's already compromised.
So there's nothing we can do.
Let's just enjoy it and see how we can make other generation better than this. Wow, that's scary. Very scary. All right, see you tomorrow on International Forum. Bye for now.